the building inspector too, as far as make it a better experience, because that guy's trying to put in a propane tank, and it's like, oh, you got to do another permit. Now you got to pay for that permit. Now you got to do this. Just it's all part of one house. Just make the experience good for the homeowner trying to move in. There is a little thing that I want to add here too. It's one thing we've kind of recently run into with a couple builders. They finish up the house and they leave town and don't pay their utility account. So I want to add a line in here to kind of codify it, saying we have a case right now that's going on, and that same gentleman owns another lot and intends to build a house. Okay, you got to square up. You got to pay off your utility before we're going to issue a building permit. I think that one. I don't think there'd be anybody contesting that one. Pool and spa permit fees. As we started going through this, you'll see we have some upcoming building code to talk about pool code. As part of that, there's some additional inspections. So as part of the additional inspections, we need to cover our fees, and so that's why the increase from 525 to 700, which is still pretty reasonable when you consider what it costs to put in a pool. Project permit area. So I can't even remember when you did this, several years ago. We changed our policy on water heater replacements. It used to be $75 for a permit, and water heater's not that much, but by the time you pay a plumber and everything come out. So what we did is we lowered that permit fee. We've had an increase in people actually pulling permits for water heater replacements. We're still not perfect. We still don't have 100% compliance, but we have increased compliance on that. So I want to propose repeating the same thing for the outdoor mechanical units. Same thing where it's, if you're just replacing the unit, then what we want is we want the compliance. We want to make sure that it was done correctly. And so, again, I want to propose lowering those costs from 75 to 25. I think Daryl had a recent experience with replacing that, so
should have waited another couple of weeks, right?
A big sticker shock when you go replace those. So it's do our part to try to keep the permit fees down.
Yep.
Staying in the same area. Previously, we had, if you were less than 50 square feet of flat work, there was no permit fee. We started rethinking that a little bit. We don't require a permit for a shed until it's 250 square feet. So we're kind of, wait a minute, we kind of felt like that was out of sync. You start looking at the size, 250 square feet, that's a car, maybe the car is 20 feet long, 10 feet wide. So it kind of makes sense that, 250 seems maybe a more appropriate number, where 50 is not that much.
You could get kind of wacky where you put in a 240 square foot shed that you don't need a permit for, but the 50 feet, the steps to go in the shed, you need to get a permit for.
Yeah.
It gets convoluted, so it might as well just sync them up.
Okay, so moving on to plan review. This is another area that we've kind of tried to streamline. So pool and spa, one of the things we've done is we've now, part of the permit fee increase on the pool and spa was to include the plan review. Again, make it easier for everybody. Just write one check, not a whole bunch of little line items. We broke out the remodel and the home addition. Some recent experience, what we're kind of finding is the remodels are, there's a lot of people doing remodels, but that might be a kitchen, a bathroom. Some of the home additions we're seeing where there's a couple home additions where that's another house, that's not another bedroom. So that requires a lot more intense plan review. So again, trying to recover our costs on that. And then just before the meeting, we ended up sneaking in another one where we have our first generator installed for backup home power coming in. And so one of the things that we're kind of learning as we go through that one, there's a lot of ambiguity with that, because there's buried underground electric, you got to power it, so it's propane, and so we need a plan review for that, because flammable and high voltage, just got to make sure that's done right. And then re-inspect. This is actually, again, trying to kind of streamline things a little bit. Actually, there's only one thing that really didn't change in this, is that for our new home build, you would have basically four mulligans. So you get 4 re-inspects included with the new home. One of the things we're trying to do too is, as we streamline this, what would happen is before a CO inspection, the requirement is for the builder to square up on all re-inspection fees. Then we'll allow a CO. And the guy will go out there and do an inspection, and he misses one room with one smoke detector, it fails. You gotta pay again before we'll come out. So it's like, they rarely fail a second CO, because when they fail the first one, they get a punch list of the things that were missing. So it's like, you fail the second one, you had it coming.
And I think where we're headed with this down the road would be, now that Clint's got all this thing, this great database, we can track all these houses, would be, once we get a nice, good sample size, is to go in there and look at it and say, okay, based on the last, 15 houses, what's the median number of fails? What's the 75th percentile? So who are the 25% that had the most fails? If that number is 6, then let's give everybody 6 mulligans. Then, unless you're at the tail or you're doing a lot of partials, it's a huge house and you're doing the front and the back, and then there's 3 different. But try and make it again. If you just build a normal house and you're a fairly decent builder, you don't have to come back to the office, because you'll have less than 6, re-inspects that everybody else gets. And that would be perfect for us. Again, Linda got in the loop one time. And then, the building inspector does everything from A to B, and then Shannon gets in the loop at the end and converts the house on the utility billing, right? It's kind of like everybody just does their lane, and when they finish, they hand it off to the next guy. And we're not crossing back against each other to, you got to tell Steve, don't do the CO because Linda hasn't been paid $200 in re-inspect fees, and we're crisscrossing against each other, and we'd like to minimize that as best.
And kind of sticking with our experience there with doing baking in some re-inspect fees with houses, we're seeing, some going back through all the data and looking at everything. We're seeing the same thing with the pool and spa. There's generally always one re-inspect that has to happen. So again, trying to keep it going. Project jobs, these would be like, a detached garage, or maybe somebody a shed. Typically when there are only about 4 inspections, people get through them. What we've seen is we've, digitized everything. When people have about 5 inspections, that's when there starts to be, hey, there's one that's failed. So again, just trying to kind of come up with ways to make it more efficient, come through. And the conversation we're finding too with builders, it goes a lot smoother if you go, well, you know what, your re-inspect fees are this, but we credit you on, and then, okay, just pay it off and move. So there's a little bit of, just again, trying to make it a good experience. The CO and CSI inspection there, just kind of cleaning up to be consistent. Later in the document, you'll kind of see that the way it was kind of priced out was a little confusing, so I was just trying to sync things up a little bit. And then, scroll through, I think. So, water rates, already kind of discussed. We're adding in Rocky Point, formerly known as Last Resort. And then I think the last item in here was
6.2.
Oh. What?
6.2.
Oh, the last item?
Yeah.
This is the one that's really going to put everything over the top. We're going to take pet registration fees from $5 to $0. Kind of went through that pretty fast, but are there any questions, any concerns with the strategy? Or?
I just saw the one we moved the section for retaining walls over.
So our code, that's actually being consistent with our code. So our code is, if you have a retaining wall over 4 feet, it has to be engineered. If it's a retaining wall that, a person that's 6 foot tall can step over, there's no need to do a plan review. And so that's where, I think where you're seeing that's in the plan review table. So we're not getting rid of the inspection, what that does is now if you have a plan review, you have to pay for the plan review and the inspection. So again, we're trying to streamline things a little bit where
there are some cities that have retaining walls, and some codes it's 2 feet. Right. Which is ridiculous. That's 2 blocks stacked on each other. Two going along.
Yeah, and actually we're consistent with the surrounding cities. Frisco, Little Elm, Prosper, Salina, everybody's 4 feet.
Okay. All right.
we've been digitizing all the files, so we have good data, but to Mark's point, right, as we get more familiar with the building site and we get our processes streamlined a little bit more and get more clarified, I think there'll probably be additional opportunities we can look at in the future, but these were just kind of a few that were just really stuck out where, especially like the CO, right, the guy, he fails over a smoke detector. He knows it was his fault, he missed the smoke detector, but I gotta pay another $100 to bring that out. That happened to me.
And now you're going to make sure it doesn't happen to somebody else.
Actually, to be clear, though, that only applies to a new house. So people moving in, one of the things we're trying to be more proactive about is when a person is moving into town and they give us their utility count and they schedule a CO, we send them a checklist right out of our code that says, here are the things the builder's going to look for. So we're pushing that we're doing everything we can to make sure when the builder shows up, or when the building inspector shows up, which we had one last year, the building inspector showed up, nobody there. What do you mean I have to be there to let them in? Again, so we're trying to push that information and put more onus on the person that's doing the CO that they have everything they need.
All right. So this one's a consideration item.
So I make a motion that we approve the Consolidated Fee Ordinance.
So a motion to approve the amended Consolidated Fee Ordinance. Serena has a second. All right. All those in favor? Everybody? Good. Thank you. All right. Next up, we have a real page turner. We have the International Residential Code. So let me explain this to everybody. So about every year, is it 4 years and 3 on the electrical?
It's every 3 years for both.
Every 3. So every 3 years they update the codes, and we typically wait for Frisco or Prosper to do it. And what they do is they just have local amendments. So you're not seeing the code, you're seeing local things that are changing in the international code. And basically what we do typically is we wait till other people adopt and figure out what makes sense, what doesn't. And then Clint spends a couple of weeks going through all that, reading it, and then trying to tailor it. Because one of the things that cities do around here is that everybody tries to adopt the same codes, so builders can't shop. They can't shop around and say, let's go build over there in, city X because their codes are lousy and we can build crap over there. So everybody tries to harmonize and get on the same codes. We just lag everybody else because we let them do all the legwork. And so we are on the 12s?
We're on 12.
We're on the 12s.
We actually skipped 15.
Yeah. So so this is pretty much par for us to update. And now Clint will go through it. We're not going to go through every single thing. There's only a couple of substantive things, really, that's us. But if you'd like to see, Clint brought the book, if you'd like to see the actual IRC.
What are you reading?
But what you're going to see in here is stuff that's out of context. You're just going to see a sentence which says blah, 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 but that's actually the 83rd sentence in a big section. That's because this is only the things we're altering. Everything else is staying the same. So that's why if you try and read it as it lies, it can get really convoluted trying to make sense out of what you're reading. Because you're hopping around.
Okay. And most cities will actually say this paragraph, and then the third sentence change this word. And that gets real. And so what I always try to include the whole paragraph. And so it can get a little tricky. You see the underline, the strike text. But again, I try to make it a little easier for how some cities do it versus trying to make it readable. And again, that for our benefit is really easy just to say, hey, strike that paragraph or strike the paragraph and add this paragraph. But again, I try to put the whole thing because we want the builder to understand the difference rather than just skim through it.
And these are not, we're not going to vote on these tonight. These are just to give everybody a chance. Because I don't think any of you guys have seen these yet. Daryl, you might have. I don't know. But
Maybe.
But this is an iteration that we go through. So I just want to make you guys comfortable with it.
So what we've typically done is when we do go through this, we do one public hearing. We put them, and the public hearing isn't required. We do it, but because we're a small town, it's easy to do and let people talk on it if they want. The first month, we just put them on there for discussion. And then next month, the expectation is we come back and, we adopt them.
Okay? talk about, I guess, some of the couple of changes, but like I say, there's not many substantive things in what we're already doing. All right, Clint.
So for residential code, we're moving from 2012 to 2018. One of the items we changed is we're going to standardize on the rebar spacing for flat work. We haven't. I don't know if we were able to ever figure out where 16-inch centers came from or why. All of our neighboring cities are 18, and that is again because we aren't standardized with our neighboring cities. That's a common fail point because guys just it's 18-inch and so
Yeah, they're just used to it.
I think that's why they did it.
Yeah.
10, 15 years ago was to try and play gotcha, because you didn't know, you'd set up like everybody else, right? Why in the world? What's the difference? But yeah, okay.
several years ago, I'll admit to it, I was the one that put a line in there about no construction work on Sundays, and that was primarily for house builds. What I was really kind of concerned the way I sold it then was the neighbors get one day off from the banging, from the cars, from the trash, and everything that we try to keep going in check, but it always happens. Since then, what we've kind of learned is that Sundays become a good day for the painters to go in because there aren't a lot of people around. And so what I'm proposing here is we allow an exception to Sunday work, but only for finished work type, so painting, finished carpentry, they're laying tile. There's a condition in there, but it can't cause a noise nuisance, so we always have a way to kind of shut it down if the music is too loud or something like that.
This is pretty much the way we've been running under COVID. This is in the residential code.
Yeah. Okay. I wasn't looking at that. I'm working off of. All right. I'm working off a memo. I don't think the memo made it in there, right? So sorry about that.
So under COVID, one of the things that I relaxed was trying to get the workers spread out. Try and, utilize that. So we've been allowing Sunday work for COVID. The builders still ask me, but I let them do it with that kind of mantra, like, look, you can do it, but if you start making noise, if the neighbors complain, I'm going to shut you down. But, it's better to have the trades spread out than to have plumbers and dry rockers and sheetrock guys and everybody else all in the same confined space. The sheetrock guys want to do it on Sunday when nobody else is there. That's good for the home team. That was my decision March of last year to allow that. So it's working out pretty good. I have had no complaints about anybody on Sundays.
Well, this is pretty. Is there a reason it's so specific versus you can work on the inside on Sunday as long as it's not a noise? You have specifically final stages. Why can't it just be you can work on the inside as long as you're not causing a noise?
It really can't. The reason it was worded final stages is to get the one story that really kept coming is the painters, right? They go in, they mask everything off. They don't want the dust. They don't want other people in their way. Or it's the finished carpentry, it was never really too much of an issue. It has come up with drywall in the last year or so, but this was really kind of written more of a non-pandemic kind of. And again, usually the reason I sold it before was trades bring in a lot of cars, they bring in a lot of traffic, and it's just give the neighbors one day off, right? A house build is about 6 months, at least let them have one day. So yeah, I wrote it pretty specific, but that's kind of the rationale behind it. But as Mark noted, it's a pandemic, right? We didn't start it, we got to work with it though.
I don't go and look and see who's there, or I don't look. But I think for us being, I think that's good for us. We're a small town. I think getting people finished faster, getting trades out of here is better for us in the long run than to. But I think we can always change it later. But I think it's a good staff, and we always have the ability that if it is a nuisance or it makes, if they complain to me, I can go and look at it. Yeah, so, we're not losing anything. It's just more or less gaining a little bit of flexibility, and I don't see much downside if they do it right.
the other thing I added in there was, this actually came from Frisco and I thought was a good idea, was adding a minimum size for sewer drain lines. And this is particularly the line from the house to the city sewer. We haven't had this scenario before, but those lines are sized based on the number of fixtures you have and the amount of drain water. So there are scenarios where a 3-inch would be sufficient. That's not good for public works. So I'm trying to clean those lines out. So just easier to say everybody's going to be 4. The other big change in the residential code for 2012 is the swimming pool regulations were part of it in an appendix. Moving to 2018, they have taken that appendix out of the residential code and made a standalone swimming code. So by doing this, just keep this in mind. When we get to next month, if you want to approve the residential code but not the swimming pool code, those two have to go together. Because otherwise we're sitting there without a code for swimming pools. And so they did make a couple changes. Before we just blindly adopted the appendix, but now that's broken out, one of the things we want to do is we want to change the way the discharge of backwash and drain water for pools. One of the things we're finding is that if a person in the scenario decides to drain their entire pool, that entire pool goes to our sewer plant, which in some cases, some of the pools in the town are larger than what our capacity is in the sewer. I shouldn't say capacity, but the volume of water that is there. So now all the biological bugs just got hit with a big shock of
Just think about the concept. The pool is hyperchlorinated to kill bugs. The sewer plant is made of bugs. We can't kill the bugs, otherwise the sewer plant ceases to run. So
most cities this works well because the volume is in their favor. I mean, you talk about like City of Denton, somebody drains their pool, okay, whatever. But for us, because we're literally a drop in the bucket. Exactly. What I've done is add a code in there that's actually consistent with the City of Austin, and that discharge your backwash water or drain water to a vegetated area on your property after it's been dechlorinated and after it's reached a pH neutral number. And then the other little tag is there. Don't drain it onto your neighbor's lot. Keep it on your lot. One other item in there is that in the international code, even for residential pools, they require a rope and float. That's not what we want to do.
do you have a rope, Eric, across your deep end?
I do.
It floats.
Okay.
You have little diamonds built into the concrete for...
I do not. So all of that type of stuff still remains in the code for commercial or public pools. For residential pools, we're just relaxing some of that a little bit. Okay, any questions at that point?
I didn't see it. Is there a fence? Is that in there?
Yes.
Yeah, that's in there.
Yeah, that's part of it.
It's just not changing.
Right. It's not an amendment.
It's in the big book.
Not that big book, but a different big book.
Okay.
National Electric Code, actually no changes to what we're doing. The only change that I did was that this changing the way we're allowing aluminum wiring. So previously, the way we adopted it, we were allowing aluminum wire on the feed lines, but it could actually, based on your feeder load, change be sized. So what I've done is been very specific that on the feeder lines, everything has to be 1/0. And so that's very typical of houses are done. It's just,
Okay.
I think my computer's about to restart. Yep, I got 10 seconds to get through it. Energy Conservation Court, that didn't change. That's the same thing. State of Texas is overriding everybody on that, so that's just basically changing from 2015 to 2018. And the rest I'm going off of memory. Yeah, if you don't mind. Sorry.
I don't think there's...
Mechanical code, I don't remember the...
I don't remember talking about much in sanitary or plumbing.
No, I think they were pretty much straight over adoptions.
Yeah, I don't remember anything significant. The biggest significant change to me was the pool backwash. So we're actually, right now in the last week, we had to back out our sewer plant. It's another $10,000 because the bugs are dead. It's out to work on it, and we were trying to figure out the polymers to get the right polymer for the sludge, and they couldn't do it. They said your plant is dead. So we had to just back it out and start over. So
Can you introduce new bugs to it?
we do that every day in the lift station. Yeah. I mean, that's the process. So the pools are not good for us. They are not good for us at all.
Mechanical code, I'm looking at it now. So mechanical code, we didn't make any changes from other than going from 2015 to 2018. The plumbing code got the same line item the residential code did. It's about the sizing of the drain is going to be 4. And then also there's a line in there that for protection of the potable water, but the international code doesn't have a double check assembly, so that's pretty common practice, so we allow that. So that's just a quick little ad to do that.
Okay. All right, then next month we'll probably add the fire code.
Yeah, that'll be some good reading there.
So we'll probably add the fire code to this, and then that'll be it on the codes.
Thank you, Clint.
It's a lot of work, but it's one of the necessary evils that.
Yeah, you wait till you see that fire code. So. That's about 2 of those books, at least.
We'll come back next month and we'll roll through these and vote on these next month.
And if you have any questions, because I know you're going to go home, read about them, think about them for 30 days solid. If you have any questions, send them to Linda, and I'll make sure I'm ready, prepared to address them next month.
There's no garage code now, so you're okay there.
No, I was curious, we can see it here, but is there anything in regards to like commercial mowing? Right, like that kind of goes away.
For commercial what?
Like mowing, like,
No, that would, international codes are about, well, I take that back. There is one for property maintenance.
Yeah.
We've never adopted that one. And that one is probably worse than the fire code, because that one is very interesting the way the international code is written. It kind of defaults to more of cities with commercial. And so, where you give the building inspector the right to show up unannounced to inspect to see if your kitchen has the right surfaces, it's clean, no cockroaches, screens, things like that. But the way it's written, it doesn't really clearly say commercial versus residential. And there's some items in there that are like, that's just not how we operate, so.
We're not. Steve's not executing a search warrant.
Yeah, because there's actually a line in that one that I remember where it's like, oh, if he shows up and he's looking around and finds other violations, like, no, this is.
Jeez, no.
No, we don't have the property maintenance code. We've never.
No, are you talking about more like on Sunday? Is that what you were asking?
Yeah, I mean,
Like, if that falls under that?
No,
You're hiring a company that comes out Sunday at 6 a.m. or something.
Oh, yeah,
No, that would be more of a nuisance. Well, I know what you're saying, because the neighbor across the street from me, that she hired somebody to mow the lot. Well, to mow the lot, you got to park on the other side of the street, which was my yard, and when they left, they didn't take their trash with them. Yeah, that sucks.
So with the pool, right, the big change to that, how do we enforce that?
Well, the way we enforce it is on new pools.
Yeah.
Steve doesn't require them to put in a P-trap and actually plumb the bloody thing right into the sewer line. It's the new construction.
The open discharger.
Yeah.
What kind of happened was that, like my pool, when it was built in the 80s, it was cartridge filters and you just drain it out on the surface. Well, since then, the international codes come in and they say, well, no, everything's got to go to the sewer. And then when you do that, you have to have a P-trap and an air gap, so you can't get water-sucked sewer water back into your pool. And so since then, other cities do this. But if you're the size of Frisco, what's one 50,000-gallon pool to you?
Yeah. How many millions of gallons per day?
So we're kind of unique. So it's gonna take a little. So what we did is we went through a little learning curve. Is wait a minute, that's going in, and then downstream we keep having, kind of finally connected the dots of what's going on. Part of that was also some things we learned as we changed the sewer operator and actually finally had a true calibration. Right now we know what our flow rates are. And it's, oh wait a minute, those are a little closer to what
Some filling. It's just going to be open line.
Yeah, so construction, anything new, retroactive, we're not gonna go make you take it out. But again, it's just a backwash line, so it's not difficult to take out. Sure.
That's good. All right, very good. We will see this again.
Thanks, Glenn.
All right, a lot of storm in there. All right, next up, discussion of concrete roads. Okay, so where are we on these bad boys? So on Monday, I think they're going to do the detour up Green Meadow, which will mean basically the whole town, you can get everywhere on concrete. So they're still going to leave High Ridge closed because they have to do the middle section. And then the last thing they have to do is the intersection here at High Ridge. And that one's going to be tricky because you have to do the whole intersection. Well, when they do that, they're working on just basically cutting the corner at the stop sign. You just kind of cut the corner and go. And but that'll be the dead last piece they have done. I still think we're looking at July before they're officially, there's no remnants of them. They've got, I think, 6 more pours to do. But you see what they have left. What you see is what they have left. There's a few minor cracks on Melody. Had them come out and look, the engineers. They're just minor shrinkage cracks. So they're not concerned at all. None of them are structural. Everything looks good on what they're doing. We had a problem today over on Cary where some moron dropped 40 yards of road base in the middle of the street, which...
Somebody at Edmill did that?
No, the homeowner ordered dirt for their yard, ordered road base for a project they're working on. So the contractor came, instead of putting it on the driveway or putting it in the yard, he dumped it in the middle of the streets.
And then what?
Well, yeah, but that's the delivery guy, delivering the stuff. Then the worker went out with the Bobcat to pick it up, and of course he's got metal teeth on his Bobcat, and he's scraping our new concrete road and scraping and destroying it with his Bobcat, so I stopped that. The problem is they had saw cut the grooves for the epoxy on the street, and they had just finished saw cutting it to put the epoxy in when he dumped the load on it. But now they have to go out and hand dig and hand try and get out the dirt that's in the expansion joint that they had just sawed. And they had just routed it so it was clean and it was routed and everything, now it's full of dirt. So I told that Bill, do what you got to do. You have to bill the homeowner bill. We're not paying for it. It was just moronic. It was an incredibly stupid thing to do. But that was today's adventure.